Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 286, and we're going to talk about how the death of Hopium. All right, anyway, sorry I missed yesterday. I had a job interview. I'm applying to be the principal or head of school, which basically is like a principal, except a lot more responsibilities, a more comprehensive kind of position because it's a private school and there's only the one school, so there's no school district. So I'm applying for that position. It's a small school, and because the university positions don't seem to be available because everyone's downsizing. This is kind of a good option. Plus, I'm getting up there in my years. I'm looking at 60 years old now. And so maybe I'm transitioning into a different uh, aspect of my life instead of doing university teaching, which I miss tremendously. And then after the interview yesterday, I had to do make midterm study guides for my middle school. And it's interesting, college professors, they complain about how many classes they have to prep for, and they call it preps. So if you have two different classes that you're teaching, there are two different preps. And so if you have, two or three preps, people are like, oh, wow, that's a lot, right? I have 11 preps, okay? And it's kind of funny, right? So I think back at when you only had one or two preps, and I'm like, man, all those people, they don't know how good they got it. And then on top of everything else, I have church preps, right? And so I preach 4 times a week, and it's to the same group of people, so you can't do the same thing twice. So it's always a bit of a challenge. And basically, anyway, I'm just whining a little bit, letting you know that if I miss an episode, it's for a good reason, or I'm sick. But I rarely get sick. I usually get like sinus infections, but I don't count that as actually being sick, because I'm still functional. All right, so the news is kind of it just makes you kind of sigh a little bit, depending on who you are, I guess. But when it comes to Trump and all of the things that he said he was going to do, and the promises he made to certain people, it doesn't really seem to be panning out. Not that I'm following it very closely, but I think Ross Ulbricht, right, letting Ross Ulbricht free once he becomes president, I think would be the only thing that I'm hanging on to at this point, just because his rhetoric is just so different now. So the honeymoon ended very quickly. I saw today that Thomas Massie is out of the Rules Committee. There are no libertarian picks for his cabinet. And then you see Tulsi Gabbard and a lot of other people just going nuts about Israel in terms of trying to, promising and vowing continued support for that situation, which is really weird. I was kind of surprised that Tulsi Gabbard would do that. I saw a meme that said, you supported Tulsi because of her libertarian leanings or, this or that. And it's no, you supported Tulsi Gabbard because she was hot, I thought it was funny. It might actually be a little bit true. I mean, I have seen the videos of her, running and shooting. And so it is, that might make a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, yes, sure, she'll do the right thing." No. And then you have the people who are running Biden and actually running the country, deliberately trying to tank this country, deliberately trying to ruin this country, and it's just kind of mind-boggling, really. I say that every once in a while, but one has to ask, where is the justice? Um, Everyone is pro-war, they're pro-Israel. Um, I think it was on a Ron Paul episode. I don't really know. I can't remember exactly, but someone mentioned that Trump had to have known about all of the money being sent to Ukraine while California was burning, and he didn't stop it. He didn't really say anything about it, and I thought that was kind of an interesting comment. He may have said something, but I haven't really been looking that hard. So California is burning on top of everything else. I'm sure you've seen the videos and how just nutty it is. At some point, law enforcement has to just basically say enough is enough and allow these people to be brought to justice, right? So their protection details, the people who supposedly are there to protect them because they're being paid to do so or something like that. Well, you know, eventually one of their families is going to be harmed. Their home is going to be burned down. And so they are going to basically allow the person that they're protecting to be arrested, to be put into jail. And I'm just waiting where that is because apparently it seems that whatever that level is, it is awfully high. I mean, it should have already happened if any of them have a shred of decency, a shred of integrity, especially when it comes to upholding the oath that they have taken. So imagine just how much worse it would be if Harris won. That's what I always think, that it would be, so Trump is more of a slower path, a slower trip down the same path. And so it allows the possibility for some small changes to be put in the mix. So is Hopium dead? Well, truth be told, I was hoping that something good would happen. Anything, I was pretty much grabbing on straws because I know that he's kind of bombastic and he says things and he doesn't really carry through. But after he was shot, I thought that maybe he would have learned his lesson that no one can be trusted, that he was going to really bring it this time. Maybe he will. Maybe all of this is a misdirection. I don't know. I doubt it though. So the probability of that being the case is slowly, quickly eroding. But the good, at least I can comfort myself and say that I never really was a Trumper in the sense of the MAGA thing. Like I never bought a MAGA hat. I never bought a Trump sticker. Um, yeah, I just don't. I just was like, okay, it's not Harris, right? Which is, I don't know, the opposite of what happened in 2020, not Trump, right? So they voted for a corpse because it wasn't Trump, right? And so this is our corpse that we voted for so that we didn't have Harris and Waltz, who were walking corpses, right? So, you know, but I didn't hang on every word of Trump. Like I didn't, you know, giggle or, I didn't even really think he's that funny either. And, I know that a lot of people say, wow, he gets these digs and whatnot. Okay, but, that's not my style. Like for me, even though there is the opportunity to make jokes, I only crack those jokes with my wife, with my family, probably at church as well, but never, publicly because it's not helpful. It's not moving the conversation along. It's like being childish, really. And, every once in a while, okay, maybe, but perhaps in a much more mature kind of way. Well, anyway, so, the love of Trump, which is ongoing, right? So MAGA people or whatever they're being called, it gets to the point where they're blind. So they don't see contradiction, they don't see hypocrisy. And that's when it's a problem. And I can never get on that train simply because of that hypocrisy and contradiction. But then I am sure that in Donald Trump's own subjectivity, right, in his own perspective, he is absolutely right, which is why he gets to act in the way that he does. And so, again, this is where we see balkanized language, or excuse me, knowledge, balkanized knowledge, which I discussed a couple episodes ago, where everyone thinks that all the different departments in the university, all the different fields, they have and share and indulge in information which is exclusive to their field. And really, all it is subjectivity that is determined by assumptions and your agenda, right? So, what is your basis and what direction are you going to go? So he thinks that he knows the right answer to a problem, and all of the different problems that he's addressing, they're all unrelated, right? So he can do something here, so he can talk about ending war in Ukraine, but support the war in Israel. He can be opposed to Chinese land grab, domination of a trade route or trade area, and then he can also then talk about, annexing Canada and Mexico and Greenland, or even buying it. I heard that's what he's doing now. He's offering to buy it. And so it's that balkanized knowledge where he thinks that if he does something over here, it has nothing to do with what's going over there, or even that they're related in some way. So I get that he and many other countries in the world are going back to a mercantile system where all production and resources come from within. And so now you're going to export. uh, and you don't really need to import as much because you're making all the stuff yourself. But of course, the big problem here in the United States is that there isn't much domestic manufacturing. And so, where all of the stuff that we buy from other countries, where that's going to come from, will be kind of interesting. And so again, if I wished that Trump would somehow have, uh, move forward with a principle, not in this very low level way of thinking about things as, okay, what's the right policy? What's the right approach to deal with this matter? And to look at each issue in isolation of everything else that bugs me to no end, but rather look at all problems, all situations through the same principle, principle of liberty. It's like when I have conversations with people and they say, oh, if someone ever were to harm my children, then yeah, sure, I would go to war. And then I said, but all those people in those other countries, they lose their children. And of course, they're going to then sign up to fight against the people who did this to them. And the United States, of course, is involved. And they never seem to see that other side. Um, you know, but if they were dedicated to try to root out hypocrisy in their own lives, then they would be able to see it. But because most people cannot see it, Trump appears to be a Superman or a savior. And once he gets into office, the whole country will get better. Yeah, if he does things in the way that he's talking about them now, then I don't see it. I can't see him making the country a better place. In fact, I think I heard that he even is going back on his remarks on Ukraine and Russia, or he goes back and forth, right? And so it's kind of hard to know what he's up to. And I know he thinks that it's all about making a deal. Look, it's all about, you know, it's not about necessarily making a deal, but simply being honest. And the more honest you are, the quicker you can get busy doing what is best, what is the most productive for you. And the great thing about the idea of using hypocrisy as a way to guide, what is a legitimate choice, what is not a legitimate choice, is that it resonates with everybody. Right. So when I was teaching down at the university, when I would talk about hypocrisy, there were very few, if ever, anyone who would disagree with hypocrisy. And of course, the disagreements come up when they refuse to acknowledge their favorite hypocritical thing, right? So they say, well, I dedicated my whole life for this thing, but it's hypocritical. I don't care because this is what I've decided is the thing. Well, that's religious fanaticism, right? That's a blind obedience to whatever it is that you say that you are going to follow or subscribe to, such as climate change, wind energy, solar panels, whatever. Because they convince themselves that that is the solution for everybody, then that hypocrisy there is perfectly fine. But of course, everyone has a different thing. Everyone has something that they are going to basically say, it's worth it to be hypocritical about this because it's so important, right? And so war then becomes the big hypocritical thing for a lot of people. So murder bad, uh, but war, hey, it's okay, right? So this weird thing where we become blind to various things which we have decided subjectively that it is the absolute right thing to do, and everyone's got to do it. Everyone has to participate in it. So, right. So the hypocrisy thing resonates with everybody. No one likes to be a victim of hypocrisy. So, as I began the episode, I did an interview. Uh, well, I won't get into what happened, but it's kind of funny. But nevertheless, I had an interview. And one of the questions that I was supposed to prepare an answer for was the question of what my vision is for the school. And I thought that was, and usually that's a difficult question to answer, but they qualified it, right? They supplied all these details of what they wanted to hear in my answer to the question of my vision for the school. Like, where do I see the school going? It is a Christian school, and it's part of a church's ministry. Like it's one of the activities that a church uh, is going to do, and they fund most of it, right? The church itself funds it, even though hardly, I think maybe one or two students in the entire school actually go to that church, right? So, but nevertheless, it's still a church ministry, and so there are restrictions in terms of what you can do. Um, and so I figured, okay, so within that limitation, restriction, within that bound, my vision was for this Christian school to be as good as any other school in the public sector. Keeping in mind that I'm not thinking about the underperforming schools, right? Like it has to be as good as a crappy school. But no, it has to be like, well, that's the goal, right? To be as good as other schools, right? And why is that? Well, because a lot of people seem to think that faith becomes the excuse for mediocrity, right? Even Vivek talked about mediocrity, and it's not restricted or exclusive to public education, American government socialization, propaganda. It's not exclusive to that, but that if you believe that your information, the knowledge that you're going by, is somehow the truth with a capital T, it gives you the excuse to be intellectually isolated. Like you don't interact or dialogue with the rest of the world because you don't need to, because you already have the truth. But I go the other way because I didn't go to a Christian school. I wasn't, well, I went to a Catholic school when I was younger, but that was only to escape all the violence against Asians in public schools back in the day. Um, so, all the schools I went to were public schools, never a Christian school. And so at every turn, my faith and what I believed was true was constantly challenged. So a lot of people, what they do is they say, okay, well, you don't want to constantly be challenged, so they withdraw from society. And then what they teach and go into at the church is hyper spiritual, right? It's uber over the top spiritualism, and none of it, or very little of it, has any kind of practical, real world application. And that was always frustrating for me when I was younger, when I had to work with other churches and leaders in other churches. And so I don't like that route. I don't like just trying to come up with something that sounds profound, but when no one understands it or can make sense of it, you say, "Well, see, the only way you actually know it is you got to be spiritually mature." And yeah, I don't believe that. If it makes sense, it makes sense. You don't have to invoke some kind of hyper spirituality and say, "No, this information is closed to you." Right. But then that means everything should swing both ways. And so people who are in the church should be able to completely understand and compete against all of the information that is going around in the world. And that's not what happened. Right. You see a lot of churches, kowtow to information that comes from the world. Um, Universities dictate what churches teach to their congregations, right? And so it's a kind of upside down relationship. But to me, if you say you believe in something and it's true and that it allows you to be functional in this world, right? In other words, it doesn't lead you to conclude that you have to withdraw from the world, then that is a testament that you are on the right track of something. Now, keep in mind, there is no one right track, right? Because all of our subjectivities are different. And so, from our starting point, trying to grow and become a better person, it's going to follow a different road because each of us are different people looking at the world in a different way, seeing things differently, understanding things differently. And so, therefore, how we go about doing the right thing as such, right? Is going to be different, right? But if your life is getting better and that you are successful at what you do, you are among the best who do what you do, then to me that's a testament that you're doing something right, that you're on the right track. And keeping in mind, I said there are many right tracks, okay? And so I'm not trying to say my track is better than yours. I'm trying to say that personal improvement is sort of the guideline of knowing that you're on the right track or not. And this applies to people of any faith, right? It doesn't matter if you believe in God, you don't believe in God, right? Because every argument that one group says to another can also be thrown back at them. So I'm not really worried about that. It's the hypocrisy thing that, everyone appeals to. And it happens to be a major part of Christian, um, you know, uh, standard for self-critique, right? And so, hey, there it is. And so, in other words, just saying you have faith or that you believe in God is not an excuse to be mediocre. Rather, it's the opposite, that I believe that if what I believe is true, then it should make you rise above mediocrity, And so when I was teaching at the university, okay, I compared myself to a lot of other people. Like, do other professors get the same kind of reaction I do? Do I get the same kind of engagement as anybody else? And if I could be among the more positive feedback receiving professors, then I would say, yeah, see, this is a good thing. And that's the way it used to be, right? Other teachers would say, oh, how are you doing it that you're getting responses like that, engagement like that, participation like that, enthusiasm like that? And so you would share information, but now no one cares. It's all about my ideology is right, and you better appreciate and be thankful that I'm sharing it with you, and that's kind of weird. It's goofy, and clearly the results are not good. And it's because it's mediocre, right? It's a very average at best and usually subpar. So the lesson that I wanted to kind of close with today is that everyone should strive to be the best version of oneself. And every belief system, call it religion, call it philosophy, call it atheism, whatever, it doesn't matter, but that everyone, no matter what you believe is true, should strive to be the best version of yourself. And I do believe that people eventually will cross paths. Just like I said in the university, the balkanization of knowledge, of dividing knowledge into subgroups and saying they're independent of each other is crazy talk. That eventually, when you get deep enough, you realize that all of the different departments come back together. And so, in that broad general sense, without ever being specific, because it can happen in any kind of way, if people are constantly trying to improve themselves, then they cross paths with other people who are trying to improve themselves. And as long as we never stop, then we'll stay on the right track, right? But that's the problem. Just like all these leftist professors, when they find something that they like or that makes them feel comfortable or doesn't require them to continue to research and study, they stop, right? They stop. And that phenomena of stopping not only is in the university, but it happens in churches, outside of churches, in schools, in businesses, all the time. And we know already, and this should already be familiar with you, instead of striving to do better and constantly trying to improve yourself, and you say, no, I'm just going to stay right here, you are regressing. You're going backwards. You're not staying in the same place, right? But rather you're going backwards, right? And so things start to fall apart, things start to break, problems start to occur. And the only way to avoid that is to continually push yourself to be a better person, to know more, to understand more, to, be able to figure out enough so that you can prepare for the future. So make no mistake, uh, in spite of the little hopium that I had, I never stopped preparing for the worst case future scenario, right? And that's what it means to be prepared, to be aware of the risks that the choices of other people will adversely affect you. And that's basically it for today. I hope that you're able to get something out of that, and I'll talk to you guys next time.